Hi, my name is Karina.
My name is Jeffrey, and we're both from Academic Harmony today to talk to you about musicianship. And so, firstly, we'd like to start off by talking about individual playing. And so, to start off, I'd like to discuss your attitude towards music as a whole. And so, what's important to keep in mind when you play music is understanding your enjoyment of music. So, each person comes to specifically classical music, that's what we'll be discussing today, with different levels of enjoyment. Some people might enjoy other genres of music, such as jazz or other improvisational styles, and these different approaches all have different musical backgrounds. And so, when you truly understand a genre of music or you enjoy a genre of music, that's when a person can have the most fun while playing music. And so, it's important for every person to recognize this on their own. And for example, there are many different influences that can affect your how much you enjoy music. For example, some people might have a different motivation, such as listening to like recordings, or some people might be told by their parents from a young age that you must learn an instrument growing up, right? And of course, this is affected by like your cultural background, your family situation, and all these different factors that can affect how much you truly enjoy music and how much you're involved with music.
In addition to genre and external influences, it's important to recognize your internal relationship with music. Regarding attitude to music, it's important to know that there is a difference between forcing yourself to play music and practicing even though you don't like it because you like music. It's important to distinguish between the two, and it's important to have a healthy relationship with music. In addition to that, I want to talk about the mentality behind practice habits. Like I was talking about, it's important to recognize that practicing is often a difficult and unenjoyable process for most people. But it's important to have a good relationship with practicing habits, because often to play the pieces that we enjoy the most or to have fun with music, it's important to have down the basics of music and to have down techniques before we can really get into the musicality of a piece. So it's not that you not enjoy music if practice feels like a hard thing to you, but rather persevere through it if you really enjoy music.
And furthermore, each person needs to recognize what their goal is when they practice. Before every practice session, it's important to establish what you want to achieve in this practice session. Now, some people may be auditioning for an orchestral position, so they might be preparing orchestral excerpts, or they're learning a part of an orchestra, a symphony piece. But some people might be performing for solo competitions, concerto competitions, and this requires soloistic practice, something that like you develop on your own and also involves a lot of phrasing and a lot of sort of free practice. In contrast, the orchestral practice that I mentioned earlier often requires a lot of hours of like metronomic work where you're carefully grinding the details of the piece that aren't quite clear on the surface. And that's what's really important for these different types of practicing. So it's always important to establish what you want to achieve in a certain session of practicing and use that to guide your fun during your practice.
In addition to different practice goals when setting, a big part of attitude towards music, individualized playing, and musicianship is the idea of support. Music isn't just an individualized thing. Music is part of a very big community, both from modern times and throughout history. And sometimes it's okay to say that you either need a break from music or that you need more support, or that the community is a very important part to you. What that looks like might be having conversations with your parents if you notice yourself becoming really burnt out from music, or feeling that music has become a very stressful and boring and dry thing that you continuously do, not for the sake that you like music, but for the sake of family pressures or peer pressures. Another part of what community support could look like is just taking days out of your day, like usual week, to play with friends who also enjoy music, even if it's not for a competition or for a piece that you're preparing. That could be a very good way to de-stress yourself from the more competitive and the more serious aspects of music playing. Another big part is the idea of role models and people that you look up to when you're playing music. For me personally, I really started enjoying music, specifically flute, and began working hard on it because I met someone who I really looked up to in terms of their musicality and musicianship and technique. It was honestly less about the technique, but more about the way that she played music that really inspired me to also want to play like her one day. And so it's important to have those kind of role models. Even if it's someone that you don't know personally, it could be helpful to look at people who play your instrument online, specifically those who are known for their musicality and techniques. And that's also another way that you can have more support and more fun with music.
And so personally, I have a slightly different experience than Karina, but similar in the way that I also grew up with a role model. From my birth, I always listened to my older brother, practicing classical violin or classical piano in our home. And so I was hugely influenced by this. And from a very young age, I was always listening to these classical composers and also my brother playing music. And this brought me to have this interest in classical music when I grew slightly older. So I began by playing piano, and as I grew more mature and slightly older, I began to move into violin, which is what my brother played. And so I used my brother as sort of a role model for how I should approach music, more in the sense that he influenced me hugely from a young age. And rather than directly being inspired by his playing, I used his guidance as a way to bring myself up. And I hence learned a lot about classical music starting from a very young age, and this is what brought me to enjoy it so much now. And I'm a classical violinist, and I've been playing the violin for almost 9 years now.
So the message of both our anecdotes is to tell you that it's important to find the balance between having fun and working hard, especially with music. And there are many, many people who have similar and different experiences from you that could support you, that could make music more fun to you, because music isn't just an individualized thing, despite this being on individualized musicianship, but your personal experience with music is very dependent upon whether you have a healthy and enjoyable relationship with music.
Thank you for listening.